You survived the slaughter. That alone should have meant something. 50,000 dead in a single day. Consuls fallen. Legions erased. The dust of Cannae thick with blood and silence. And yet, you were alive. Captured. Disarmed. Bound. Hannibal counted you. Rome did not. This is not a story about defeat. It's a story about what a republic does when mercy threatens discipline, and what happens when loyalty is tested, not on the battlefield, but in the Senate. Because after Cannae, Rome faced a decision far more dangerous than Hannibal's army. It had to choose between saving its soldiers or preserving its identity, and it chose itself. In 216 BCE, the Roman Republic suffered one of the most catastrophic defeats in military history. At Cannae, Hannibal Barca executed what military historians still study today, the double envelopment, a tactical masterpiece. Roman legions, confident in numbers, were lured inward. The Carthaginian line bent, then closed, front, rear, left, right. Compression became suffocation. Men died without seeing the blade that killed them. Between 50 and 70,000 Romans perished that day. Ancient sources like Polybius and Livy struggled to capture the scale. It was not a battle. It was an annihilation. And yet, amid the bodies, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 Roman soldiers were taken alive. They expected death. Instead, they were counted. Hannibal did not execute them. He separated them. Rome's Italian allies were released without ransom, sent home with a message: Rome cannot protect you. But Roman citizens? They were kept, not out of mercy, out of calculation. In the ancient world, ransom was normal. Captured soldiers were exchanged. It was practical, civilized in its own way. Hannibal sent envoys to Rome. Pay, and your men. Return. It was not humiliation. It was custom. The Senate received the offer, as panic still trembled through the city. Entire families wiped out. A consul dead. Fields without sons. And now, a choice. They debated. And then they refused. No ransom. No negotiation. No exception. On the surface, it was strength. Rome would not bargain with its enemy. But beneath that posture was something colder. Fear, not of Hannibal, of surrender. Because if Rome paid ransom for the survivors of Cannae, what message would that send? To future soldiers? That capture was survivable. That surrender had a safety net, that the Republic would retrieve you, even if you laid down your sword. Rome was built on discipline, on endurance, on the expectation that a citizen would fight until death. To pay ransom would introduce doubt, and doubt corrodes empires. So the Senate chose doctrine over men. Families were forbidden from organizing. Public funds to redeem their sons. Private grief was subordinated to state principle. The message was unmistakable. Rome will not pay for those who survived. Imagine learning that in captivity. Not immediately. News traveled slowly. Months passed. Perhaps you still believed negotiations were underway. Perhaps you told each other stories to stay sane. They will come. They have to. But the envoys never returned with coin. And eventually, the truth reached you. There would be no rescue. This is where the story shifts. Because what Rome did was not physical brutality. It was psychological abandonment. You had fought beneath the Roman eagle. You believed citizenship meant protection. That sacrifice implied reciprocity. Instead, you became an example, a warning to others. Life in captivity was not theatrical cruelty. Ancient sources do not describe mass executions of the Cannae prisoners. Hannibal was not reckless. He was strategic. The prisoners were likely moved to Carthaginian-controlled territories in southern Italy. Some used as labor, some confined in camps, some dying quietly from hardship and disease. Years passed. The Second Punic War did not end quickly. It stretched for 17 years. While you endured captivity, Rome rebuilt. It raised new legions, drafted younger boys, hardened its resolve. It refused peace. It refused ransom. It refused to bend. There is a brutal consistency in that refusal. Rome did not see 10,000 abandoned men. It saw a precedent avoided. This is the psychological core of the decision. States survive by narrative. Rome's narrative was invincibility through endurance. If surrender became rational, that narrative fractured. So Rome made surrender irrational. By ensuring survival offered no guarantee. This was not about the captured men as individuals. It was about conditioning every future soldier. Fight to the death. Because death is preferable to capture. Because capture leads to abandonment. It is easy to admire this as strength. But strength without compassion carries a cost. And that cost is trust. When a state demonstrates that principle outweighs loyalty, something subtle shifts in the social contract. The captured men of Cannae became ghosts within Rome's identity. Alive, but erased. And yet, the war turned. Years later, a young commander named Publius Cornelius Scipio emerged. He studied Hannibal's tactics, refused to confront him on Italian soil, carried the war into North Africa. In 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama, Hannibal was finally defeated. Carthage sued for peace. Only then were surviving Roman prisoners from earlier defeats recovered. By then, many were dead. Those who returned came back older, hardened, altered. They had survived Cannae. They had survived captivity. But they had also survived something more corrosive, knowing their republic had chosen not to save them. There is no record of celebration for their return, no triumphal parade. Their existence complicated the myth. They were living reminders that Rome had once said no. History often praises Rome's refusal as necessary severity, and strategically, it may have been. Rome did not collapse after Cannae. It did not negotiate. It did not disintegrate. It endured. Discipline was preserved. Future legions fought with the knowledge that surrender guaranteed nothing. The Republic survived. But survival and morality are not the same calculation. The deeper question is not whether Rome was right. It is what kind of society makes that choice. Because this was not merely military strategy. It was psychological. Engineering. Rome understood something fundamental about human behavior. Fear shapes action more reliably than hope. By removing the hope of ransom, it removed the temptation of surrender. It weaponized abandonment. That is a harsh lesson in statecraft, and it forces an uncomfortable reflection. How many modern systems operate on similar logic, where individuals are sacrificed to maintain the illusion of strength, where compassion is seen as weakness, where precedent matters more than people? The story of the 10,000 captured Romans is not about torture. It is about hierarchy. The individual beneath the institution, the citizen beneath the republic. Rome demanded loyalty. And when loyalty faltered, even involuntarily, it withdrew protection. You marched into Cannae, believing Rome was invincible. You believed belonging meant safety. But in the end, Rome's survival required your abandonment. That is the quiet brutality, not the clash of swords, not the suffocation in dust, but the Senate chamber, calm and calculating, deciding that your life was less important than the message your rescue would send. And perhaps that is the true power of Rome, not its legions, not its generals, but its willingness to sacrifice. Mercy for narrative. Empires are not sustained by kindness. They are sustained by consistency, even when that consistency costs 10,000 men. And so the war ended. Hannibal faded into history. Scipio earned the name Africanus, Rome expanded. The Republic strengthened. But somewhere in the memory of those who returned from captivity was a quieter truth. They had fought for Rome. They had survived the bloodiest defeat in its history. And when Rome had the chance to bring them home, it chose not to. That choice echoes longer than the battle itself, because it reveals something uncomfortable about power. Power protects, until protection becomes inconvenient. And when it does, principle replaces mercy. That is not uniquely Roman. It is human. And perhaps that is why this story still unsettles us. Not because of what Hannibal did, but because of what Rome refused to do. In the end, Cannae was a massacre. But the greater wound was silence. 10,000 men waiting. And a republic that never came.